This is a B6 video looking at the topic inheritance, variation and evolution, and this particular video is looking at genetic inheritance. There's a lot of terminology here and I will go through those keyword terminologies towards the end of the video. So we know that we get our pairs of chromosomes from our parents. So here we've got a pair of chromosomes, one from mum, one from dad, and the pairs match up, okay? So here is just an example of one pair. Within the chromosome, a section of chromosome is called a gene, and the gene that we're looking at here as our example is for petal colour. And we can have different versions of that gene. So here we have red petals, that's one version of the gene, and yellow petals, another version of the gene. So the gene is the section of chromosome that codes for a particular trait. And that version of the gene is referred to as the allele. And out of all of these key words, I think that's the one that people tend to forget, okay? Allele, the version of the gene. So here we've got some pairings of those different alleles. And if the pairings are the same, so you can see in the first example, they're both yellow, they're referred to as homozygous alleles. The matching pair is homozygous. And underneath that, we've got two red petal alleles sitting together, and they are also homozygous alleles. Now, I know from looking at the next slide that red is dominant over yellow. So we could describe the yellow pairing as a homozygous recessive pair of alleles, and the red pairing as homozygous dominant alleles. Here we have one of each. So we've got one red petal allele and one yellow petal allele, and that pairing is referred to as heterozygous, one of each. As I said already, some alleles are dominant over others, and in this case the red is dominant over the yellow. So if this pair of alleles was present, then the petals on the flower would be red because red dominates over yellow. So when we're drawing our Punnett squares, our genetic crosses, we tend to use capital letters and lowercase letters in order to represent the dominant and recessive alleles. And it's useful to choose a letter that is easy to tell the difference between the upper and lowercase. R is quite a good letter, B is quite a good letter, something like C or P, they're not very good letters to use because it's hard to tell the upper and lower case. So the pair of alleles is called the genotype. So we've got some pairings of alleles here, and we've also got another new word, phenotype. Think of the first two letters of phenotype as being physical. What do we physically see when we have this particular genotype? So our genotype is big R, big R. So what we will physically see in the plant is red petals. Our genotype is little r, little. What we will physically see is yellow petals. And then our final genotype pairing is big R, little r. And because the red is dominant over the yellow, the phenotype that we will see is red petals. So let's look at those 8 key words. Gene is the section of DNA that codes for a particular trait. Sometimes they use the word characteristic or feature, but I tend to use the word trait. The allele is the version of the gene that creates a different version of the trait. Okay, so that was the yellow petals, whereas the gene is just for petal colour. The genotype is the pairing of alleles, so this could be big R, big R, big R, little r, and little r, little r. They're the 3 genotypes. And the phenotype is the plant physically looks. So red petals or yellow petals. Let's look at the other 4 words that we looked at. Okay, homozygous. This was where we had 2 alleles that were the same paired together. For example, here HH, it could be the big R, the little r, the little r. Heterozygous is when we have one allele from each, so big letter and then small letter. So we had big R, little r. Now, this one often comes up as a question and it's really hard to explain, so be careful with this one. A dominant allele is one that will always be expressed even if there is only one of these alleles present. Okay, so that means that if you have big R, big R, or big R, little r, you will get that feature. But to describe an actual dominant allele, it is one that will always be expressed even when there's only one present. And then recessive is an allele that will only be expressed when both alleles of this type are present, okay, represented by lowercase letters. So this would be our little r, little r. You cannot get a recessive trait shown if both alleles are not the recessive trait. They must both be the recessive alleles for that recessive feature to show. Now we're moving on to quite a difficult question. This is a kind of higher Punnett square type question, okay? This is where we've been told in the question that we have a red flowered plant and a yellow flowered plant that are being crossed together, but we don't know the genotypes. And the question goes along the lines of, it gives you a nice blank empty space, and it says, okay, draw some Punnett squares, draw some genetic crosses that show the possible outcomes of crossing these two plants. Now, because we don't know the genotype of the red plant, we have to look at both scenarios. So if you see on the side there of each Punnett square, we've got big R, we've got big R, little r. Okay, we don't know which one it is from just being told the phenotype if it is red flowered. Okay, but we do know that the yellow flower plant, which is recessive, must be little r, little r. Okay, so that's why we've got that at the top of each Punnett square. Okay, so let's do our pairings, and our pairings in our first Punnett square say that there is 100% chance that the offspring will be red, because the red dominates over the yellow. So if we did this genetic cross and we found that they were all, and we did this on quite a large scale, we found out that they were all red flowers, we can categorically say, yes, the parent plant was a homozygous dominant genotype. However, if we do the other pairing and we see that we've got a 50-50 of red, yellow flowers, then we can say with confidence that the original parent red flowered plant was actually a heterozygous genotype. It carried that ability to have yellow flowers, but the yellow wasn't expressed. Hope you found that useful. Thank you.